Hi guys, it's Matt here from MCS-books, and recently I tweeted out a poll to see whether people would be more interested in seeing a sort of library haul of the books that I've recently taken out from the library, or whether they would be interested in seeing the books that I have recently received from my father. They were in my grandmother's attic, and they were all the books that I had when I was at university and that I kind of gave to my dad before I went to Hong Kong. Because they've all been returned to me. There's a lot of them, and people have said that they kind of want to see both, so I will, but it's gonna go in parts, I guess. So I'm gonna start today with the library haul, and then most of the books actually that I had from university are plays. So I'll do a sort of roundup of all the plays that I have and the ones that I like the most and everything. And then the other books will be kind of broken out down into other similar themes or something. But they'll probably be like a gradual output of videos. They won't all come at once. So it won't be very overwhelming for me, and it won't be very overwhelming for you either. So let's start today with the library haul. I actually only have 4 books. I thought I had 5, but I checked my account and I didn't. I only had 4. And I'm going to start with the one that I have read all the way through first, and that is this one, Who Fears Death by Nnedi Okorafor. Now, I was really excited for this book because I really want to check out Okorafor's work. I'm particularly interested in her book Binti, but my library doesn't have it, so this one they do have, and I think it's from 2015, so it's fairly recent. And I was excited to get to it. It's obviously a popular one because I had to request it and I was reserved. There was like a line of 2 people before me, and I can't renew this book, so there's obviously people who have requested it after me too, which is a good sign, and I'm hoping that libraries will take this into consideration and perhaps, introduce more diverse books to our library system. However, this book, oh my goodness, I hated it. I really didn't like it. So it's set in a post-apocalyptic Sudan. The whole book itself it follows this girl who is mixed race and therefore outcast from society, and she has these powers, and she is prophesized to be the one who could end the trouble that is in the country. So she goes on a journey across Sudan to fix the problems that are happening. There is definite traces of Islamophobia in this book, which is lightly veiled as just a sort of distaste for the role that religion played in Africa's history. But it was Islamophobic, in my opinion at least. And it's a comment about the awful ethnic cleansing that happened, and yet I cannot escape the feeling that Okorafor is trying to say that a dark population in Africa is the true population of Africa, when I think Africa is incredibly diverse. So Okorafor is a Nigerian-American woman. She's the daughter of immigrant parents, and she does have, to some extent, a privileged background in the fact that she does have a PhD, I think. So, she has been able to have privileges that not every child of immigrant parents in America does have. So then she is heavily inspired by her Nigerian culture, which oftentimes then gets, described as just West African, which kind of, in a way, limits the diversity within Nigeria itself, and then the even greater diversity of West Africa. So anyway, that's that. She's writing about post-apocalyptic Sudan, which is, the other side of Africa. Yet it's kind of almost addressing Africa as just one homogeneous country. And she has applied West African magic systems or folklore and mysticism, basically. She has applied these with the words that are used perhaps in Nigeria and, perhaps West Africa in general. And applied it to Sudan, which I'm just like, but that doesn't exist there, so why are you just putting these beliefs onto a community that traditionally wouldn't have them? And I was going to talk about this book actually for the epigraph tag that Sean the Book Maniac tagged me in, because then this book was also, the epigraph is from Patrice Lumumba, the first and only elected Prime Minister of the Republic of Congo. And I'm just like, well, what does that have to do with Sudan? This book has a very misguided idea of Africa and its diversity within people of colours, identities and beliefs and lives. So that really put me off. I kind of like that was something that was very difficult. And then there are topics in this book that discuss sort of weaponized rape and ethnic cleansing, of course, and even female genital mutilation. I don't think that handled very well at all. I mean, the weaponized rape, it just keeps on being told to us that this has happened, it was horrible, and therefore the main character is angry. And I'm like, okay, but like it misses so much like nuance as to the actual depth that weaponized rape did to the Sudanese country and to the people who were affected by it. It's just a reactionary piece that is just angry. And it seems like the main character is kind of missing the point of her anger. She's angry without truly understanding what exactly she is angry about. And the female genital mutilation, there were additional layers to it which made it quite interesting and I thought could be really powerful, yet literally the main character just who had gone through this process just kind of wished it away, and her magic, I don't even know what her magic actually is. Her magic is really vague and really ridiculous. It kind of just does whatever she wants it to do. Her magic in this just fixed the problem, and then she fixed her friends' problems with FGM. That's not good. That's not how it works. That's ridiculous and kind of just undermines the whole point of it being inside the story. To show you kind of like the ridiculousness of the magic within this. At one point, honestly, the main character who is looking for her partner, she's in a city and she's looking for her partner and she's just like, oh, how am I ever going to find him? I need to find him so quickly. I know what I'll do. I will ask his sperm, which are inside of me, where he is. So she does. She asks the sperm and they tell her where he is, and then she goes and finds him. And I'm just like, no. No. Oh my goodness. That happened. I was shocked that had happened. Well, I can't say I was shocked because that came towards the end of the book and there was so much in the start of the book that was equally as awful. So that was a big rant. It feels good to actually finally get it out. I've been wanting to make a video about this book for a long time and never really knew how to frame it or what to say. I think I've been trying to find some good in it in order to give a fair and balanced review, but at least because this is just a recent read or a haul, I don't have to worry too much about my review being so particular. But yeah, it feels good to actually finally get off my chest how bad this book was. The next book that I have out is Suburbia Tales by Robert Louis Stevenson. Now, this book I got out from the library because I wanted to buy it because Ashley from Follow Through Fiction recommended it to me, and I bought all the books that she recommended. I couldn't find this in the bookshop, so I had to get it out from the library instead. And it was in our libraries, thankfully. So I'm halfway through it. Ish. Yeah, you can see my little bookmark. I'm actually starting using bookmarks now, which is new and interesting. I don't want to say too much about it because I'm going to do an overall wrap up of the books that Ashley recommended to me for the Parasite tag. So I will say that it's basically a collection of kind of retellings of general Pacific Island folklore. And the back of it does say, it says, Stevenson emerges as a witness both to the cross-cultural encounters of 19th century imperialism and to the creation of the global culture which characterises the post-colonial world. And I feel that was really a poor way of explaining this book. It does obviously show the clash of cultures, and it is interesting in that respect, but I would talk more about it in my wrap-up of the Parasite book tag. So then the next two books are books that I've taken out and haven't read yet. The first one is The Medici by Mary Hollingsworth. Now, I did make a video quite early on my channel about 5 books that I wanted to read that nobody else would probably really care about. Now, this wasn't one of them, but one of them was another book about the Medici, and I really wanted to learn more. So then, Mary Hollingsworth came to Sidmouth, the Sidmouth Literary Festival, so I wanted to go see her speak, and I requested my library to buy this book, which they did, which is good of them because this book is £35 and not something I would ever want to actually splash out on. And then I went to the talk with Mary Hollingsworth. Now, it was really interesting. She's an art historian and with specific interest in the Medici and Renaissance art. So when she talked at the Sidmouth Literary Festival, she chose one portrait in particular. Let me see if I can find that portrait. So she chose this portrait in particular of Duke Alessandro de' Medici, and she kind of deconstructed the portrait and looked at all the symbolism and the imagery that you see within it, and used those symbolism to discuss the Medici family within Alessandro's time. And it's really interesting because he is actually the son of an African slave woman, and so therefore he is mixed race, and there was a lot of interesting discussion. He was also the illegitimate child of the Pope, so interesting. And yeah, the way that she framed her discussion about this character, he's a real person, but the way she framed her discussion about Alessandro and the Medicis as a whole was a really interesting way of doing it, and I found that really interesting. So this is quite an extensive book with a kind of, I'm going to say, even though it looks quite big, I'm going to say it must be a brief history, because it spans the Medici family from when we can first account them in history to kind of like when their dynasty ended. And it tells their history from a perspective that isn't often told, in which, rather than just lauding them as heroes of Renaissance art, it actually highlights the ways in which they exploited and capitalised and created mythologies around Renaissance arts, which I think is going to be really interesting. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to read the whole of it, because it is quite big, but there are certainly parts that she mentioned in the talk that I would really be interested in dipping in and out of. And we shall see. Maybe I do end up reading all of it, because I do definitely want to learn more about the Medici, and particularly hearing this perspective. One disappointing thing about Mary Hollingsworth was that at the end of her discussion, when the floor opened to questions, I asked her a question. She refused to answer it. I was not happy, because she started off her talk with a quote from Theresa May that Theresa May made in Florence. So I thought that was interesting that she made that quote and then kind of said that Theresa May's speechwriters had misunderstood who the Medici really were. So then, and she kind of wanted to like illuminate it. But there was also, considering that part of Theresa May's quote said how the Medici kind of like created the Renaissance art as the powerhouse that it is, and the way that it connected all of Europe, and which was a great thing. So I thought it was really ironic that Mary Hollingsworth chose this quote and then discussed like the negative aspects of the Medici in regards to their greed and their search for power and personal development at the detriment of the people of Florence and other parts around. So I asked her the question, well, what can a modern day reader learn from this book if we were to read it reflexively? Because, you know, given the time that we live in and everything that's going on in the States, you know, we should be considering what can we learn from history and how can we not make mistakes? So what can we learn from this book in regards to the things that she was talking about? And she refused to answer my question. She was like, I don't think it's appropriate. And I was like, come on. I tell you why she thought it wasn't appropriate. It was because I was the only probably 26-year-old in a room full of 70-year-old Tory voters, and that just really annoyed me, and it kind of brought a downer on the event, that she didn't feel the need, or she didn't feel the need to discuss something which I think everybody should be discussing. Everybody should be talking about what has happened in our past and how is it happening again now, and what can we do to stop it from happening again? Like, don't kind of be a coward and refuse that we can learn from history, and refuse to talk about difficult subjects. That annoyed me, but I am still interested in the book. And then, of course, and then the last book is this one. It is All the Crooked Saints by Maggie Stiefvater. This is YA. I've read Maggie Stiefvater's The Raven Boys, or The Raven Cycle. It had The Raven Boys was the first one, and I really enjoyed the first 2 books. The third one was okay, and I hated the last one. But I am really interested in this one. I think Stiefvater, as a writer, her strength lies in capturing atmosphere and place with words. She does it so well. The biggest thing I loved about The Raven Cycle, or at least the first few books, was the way that she caught a mood, and like she sort of brought this sense of the place and the sense of like this atmosphere, and gave the essence of it in her written word, and it was so rich and so wonderful, and really like transported you to her imagination and her sense of place. So I really like that. There were certain other aspects of the cycle or of those books that I didn't enjoy so much, but I am excited to see whether she can still capture that sense of place with this book and kind of rectify the things that perhaps she lacked in the other book. So it's set in Colorado. Now, I say this as if I know American geography that well. I have a sense of where Colorado is, but I don't really have a greatest understanding of what culture in Colorado would be like. But as far as I'm aware, this is a Latin American community, and the characters in it can perform miracles, and it kind of follows these characters. And I think they're all from one family, but don't quote me on that. It follows them and kind of explores the way that these people who perform miracles are seeking a miracle for themselves, yet not finding it. And I guess it kind of explores the balance between, you might have an idea of what magic is, and when you realise that it's not that, what does that mean? And I think that's something that is discussed very well in The Magicians by Lev Grossman. And I really loved that part of it, where the main character who wants magic for his whole life finally gets it and realises it's not like the cure to all things in the world and to all his problems, and that, you know, fantasy is a great form of escape, but if you are actually living the fantasy, you're still living and you still have all these problems, and it's not like a one thing fixes all. And I think that's a topic that interests me a lot, and I'm hoping that it could be discussed well in this book. But even if it's not, I think the sense of place and the sense of this place in Colorado will be really worthwhile. So I am excited to read this book too, and hopefully it lives up to my expectations. Sorry for putting expectations on you, but what can I say? So yeah, they're the books that I've taken out of the library. I thought this was actually going to be a really short video. Turns out I had a lot to say. Sorry, but I hope you found it interesting at least. And yeah, have you taken any books out from the library recently? And if you have, what books did you take out? And if any of these take your fancy, perhaps not this one, then you should check out your library, see if they have them and check them out, because we need to support our libraries and they actually do great things for our communities. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did like it, you can always give me a thumbs up. And as always, you are free to subscribe if you enjoy my content and want to see more. And I'll see you next time for another video. Bye bye.